If you're a Cleveland Browns fan looking for a break from the emotional roller coaster that is the price we pay from loving then hating our Browns, then a big welcome to Cleveland Browns Anonymous, a group therapy podcast to help you survive the season. So let's start our meeting.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Reilly on a very gray and chilly Monday, defeat Monday. Browns got killed and the Guardians lost to the Yankees, setting up Game 5. I'm already psychologically and mentally preparing myself for the Gardos to lose, but it's been a great run. With me is Brook Reilly. Brook, how you doing on this Monday?
I'm doing all right.
Well, Brook, it's wedding week for Brook Reilly. Tying the knot on Saturday. So, Brook, thank you for taking the time off your busy both work day and planning day, right?
Yeah, I feel like I've been multitasking for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think you've been multitasking for over a year. So, getting this thing. But anyways, let's jump into talking about yesterday's predictable debacle, where once again Bill Belichick took Kevin Stefanski and Joe Woods to school. The master teaching, it's almost like watching Karate Kid, the way he just sort of bamboozled both Jacoby Brissett and once again made a Hall of Famer out of his rookie quarterback. With the Joe Woods predictable defense. My God, Brook, I bet he was, this was probably the easiest week Belichick had to plan for the Browns. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
And it all starts with the theme of today's podcast, Talk is Cheap. Because he just listened to all the pablum coming out of the Browns coaching. You know what? I like Kevin Stefanski. Seems like a nice family guy, but my God, the cliches, that are just emanating from the Browns coaching is just, it's just makes your stomach churn. I mean, they had a real big practice on Wednesday, right? Where they were practicing tackling. It was intense. It was this and that. And what did they put on the field? More of the same. I mean, Belichick's got to be watching all these interviews and statements coming out of them and just smiling. Because you never hear Belichick say stuff like that. There's no team meetings among the players on a Belichick team. There's no special emphasis on practice. And he's certainly not going to disclose that to the media. Meanwhile, all we're getting from the Browns coaches is talk. Tough, smart, accountable, right? Well, if you're accountable and you're putting this on the field week after week after week, and I'm looking at you, Joe Woods, you need to be accountable, which means you need to get fired. Okay? Enough is enough. Thoughts, Brook?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the very least that Joe Woods needs to go. I mean, Browns defense got lit up by an unknown third string of quarterback. This is unacceptable. Joe Flacco, Baker Mayfield. I don't even know this kid's name. Zappy? Who knows? He looked like an all-pro, but
they got a third string running back from the MAC who torches the Browns defense. You know what, Mary? Go ahead.
I started him in let's see. That was a no-brainer.
Yeah. I mean, you could have gotten Zappy for peanuts on fantasy and killed it against the Browns defense. I mean, I had, I'm out of the the suicide pool, the national suicide pool. I exited quickly when the Browns lost to the Jets. Stupid me. Thank you, Browns. But I made it all the way to the last game last year. And all I did was pick the team that was playing the worst teams in the league. That's all I did. It was like, and there was about 100 people in the national suicide pool. who made it to the end because they did the same thing. For fantasy football players, if Joe Woods is a defensive coordinator, just select who's ever playing against the Browns D. And, that's how bad this defense is. And Mary Kay of Cleveland.com, Dan Lobby, listen, if you're listening to this podcast, they're good. I don't know, but it's not necessarily the coach's fault. It is the coach's fault. All right? It's not the players. They look confused out there. They're getting suckered in on basic plays. And all I'm hearing from the coaches is, well, we work on it this week. Well, what does that mean? Whatever you were doing didn't work, right? I mean, the coach is the problem. And how many defensive and offensive coordinators and head coaches who get canned, and I point to the Browns a couple years ago, when probably one of the best things Dorsey ever did besides draft Nick Chubb was canning Hugh Jackson and that offensive coordinator from Pittsburgh. He promoted Greg Williams to head coach, right? And he brought in Freddie to run the offense. It was overnight change for the better. Right, Brooke?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny. I read a tweet last night from Daryl Ryder, who's the Browns beat reporter for 92.3, The Fan. Do you know what the Browns record is? They've, in the past 12 games.
Oh my God. I was thinking about that too. What is it?
They've lost 9 out of 12. 9 out of 12 with this roster. And I really don't want to have to say this, but I think Stefanski's on the hot seat. I really do. I think that they're not playing hard. They're not playing smart. They're not being held accountable. That's a bad sign. Now, I don't think that they're going to fire Stefanski now, but I think if this continues for the rest of the season, I wouldn't be shocked if, maybe he was just like a one-hit wonder. Maybe he's like, I don't know, who's that coach for the Rams?
Oh,
Jeff Fisher. 8-9, 7-10, hovering around 500. Nice guy. Seems like you could go out and have a beer with him, but he can't get over the hump. And
you know what? I got a different take on this, Brooke, and this is a theme that's been in another podcast. The Peter Principle theme, where people get promoted to their level of incompetence. But I think it goes deeper than this. I mean, we don't need to get deep into the analytics, but 9 out of 12 is, you can chalk it up to Baker Mayfield being hurt, playing Jacoby Brissett. But one of the constants here has been the defense. Now, yeah, you could say, well, they had some games, they played tough against Baltimore. They played tough against Pittsburgh. But, at the end of the day, it's Stefanski's ability to make adjustments and evolve. And I think this is where coaches fail. These Pat Shurmurs, these Eric Manginis, the Charlie Weisses, the Romeo Crennels. I mean, the list is endless. The Butch Davises. I mean, look at the guy who's in Denver. Look at the guy who's in Denver. Adam Gase, who not only ruined the Dolphins, but then somehow, miraculously, talked his way into getting the Jets head coaching job and was a total disaster. So look at, Andrew Berry, Paul DePodesta, if you are listening to this podcast, you have to understand that you get a head coach like Stefanski, who probably has a lot of smarts, who was a very good, rose through the ranks in the Viking organization, was ready for his moment. He needs to be taught how to be a head coach. He is facing things he's had no training for. like firing his defensive coordinator? How about replacing Baker Mayfield with Case Keenum? Because we have two instances, and this has been the theme that I've been talking about this year, where clearly Baker Mayfield was not the answer at quarterback in those last 6 games. Case Keenum would have been very competent. He worked with Stefanski. He could have stepped in, but for some unknown reason, Stefanski kept saying over and over that Baker Mayfield gives us the best opportunity to win. That is more cheap talk. It means nothing, and it filters down to the players like OBJ, the Browns defense, because they go into games knowing that they're not fully prepared. When you start mouthing cliches about tough, strong, accountable, we had a good practice, we had a players only meeting, and nothing changes, you're going to take the field feeling like you're unprepared. Your thoughts?
Stefanski's lost the locker room, which I have a feeling is starting to happen, then there's no way that he's going to keep his job. Now, hey, I'm not in there. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know, but I know for sure that if once any team loses trust in the head coach and they're not picking it up in practice and they're not respecting him, then it's time for the coach to be let go. Now, I have a feeling that it's Joe Woods. I think that the defense is like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. We're losing to the Jets. We're losing to the Patriots, third string guy. This scheme is a joke. So, you know, I think that Woods will be probably let go if this continues after or at the bye week. But it does scare me that if Stefanski doesn't realize that his defensive coordinator probably, you know, a pretty big head coaching decision on this, then maybe he does need to be talked to by like a Bill Callahan, or he needs to be pulled into the office, you know, with Jimmy and
exactly. Yeah, he needs to be pulled into the office. That's where the owner steps in. I mean, you know, I can't believe Haslam's a billionaire. I mean, because he's obviously a smart guy, but this is where smart billionaires get exposed when they play in the NFL, because the NFL is very Darwinian. I mean, you are what your record is, and you can't talk. There's no board of directors that you can, you know, pack your company with a board of directors and flim flam the stockholders. The stockholders are the Browns fans here. They know when the product is bad, and there's no amount of talk that's going to cover that up. And that's why it is a brutal marketplace with the NFL. It's not just for the players, but it's for these coaches who get promoted, like a Joe Woods. I mean, everybody was saying Joe Woods is this young genius. What did he do that earned that title? He was playing at an organization where the 49ers had awesome defensive talent with Bosa, a defensive line, a loaded secondary. I mean, Brook, you could coach the secondary on that team. How was this guy deemed ready for prime time as the defensive coordinator? And the other thing is, Browns obviously knew something was wrong with Baker, that this was not the future. And, you know, and things have borne themselves out with Carolina, which is why they didn't give the extension. But it begs the question, how do you recognize a good defensive or offensive coordinator? And I think number one is their ability to game plan their opponent. And none of the teams seem to be thrown off guard with the Joe Woods defense, because he is scheme dependent.
Well, look, I think that what the Browns need to do is what the Rams did when McVay took over. McVay became the head coach. he hired an old school, longtime defensive guy in Wade Phillips. And he basically said, Wade, you've got the defense. I trust you. And I think with Stefanski, I think what they need to do is let Joe Woods go and bring in. I don't need a Buddy Ryan. I don't need some amazing defensive genius. I want a grown up in the room who's been there, knows what to do. I just need middle of the pack. That's it. Because if we're middle of the pack, we would be 4-2, maybe 5-1. But the defense has been a disaster. And there is no way with the talent on offense, the talent on defense, that we should be 2-4. But it's so typical. It's so typical of this frickin' team that, this has been happening. I mean, I knew that this third string guy was just going to light us up. I knew it.
Right. And so if I'm talking to Stefanski, if I'm in that room with Paul DePodesta and Andrew Barry and Jimmy Haslam, you know what? I'm doing an intervention on Stefanski and asking him, why are you so surprised that you got your hat handed to you? Didn't you know Belichick was not going to be surprised by anything you did because he knew Jacoby Brissett, right? And he's probably going to run his defense around that to stack the box, double cover Jamari Cooper, because he knows Brissett is the kind of quarterback that is first read dependent. So he's going to take that away. And it's going to make Brissett throw to his tight ends. And Stefanski's going to adjust. And Stefanski is just a puppet on a string with Belichick pulling the levers. And Joe Woods, I mean, my God. I mean, he is so predictable in the defense he's running. They're waiting for him to blitz. And they know exactly who to pick on, who to throw to. Because Joe Woods does not have the imagination to make adjustments in his scheme depending on the player he's at, the player and the team he's playing against. And what I'm stunned by, I mean, really, it's really simple. We either have the talent on defense or we have a front office that doesn't know how to draft. Now, clearly on the offensive side of the ball, between the line, between Amari Cooper, Peoples-Jones, Hunt, and Chubb, these guys know how to, Bill Callahan developing Hudson and the rest of these linemen, Wyatt Teller, taking him off the scrap heap, turning him into an all-pro. Callahan, they have the ability to draft well, and then they have the coaches to coach them up. Period. Now, if Brissett has reached his ceiling,
There's a flip side. I mean, do we know that these guys are even that good?
We don't know. With John Johnson was an all-pro.
Under a system with the Rams that had Jalen Ramsey. I don't know. I mean, all I'm saying is everyone I've talked to, my friends and stuff like that, that topic always comes up where it's like, wait, are we sure that Andrew Berry knows how to draft well? Are we sure that these players are actually that good? I mean, I think that Myles Garrett is a freak athlete, and I know that he's pretty good. With Denzel Ward, I mean, I think he's pretty good. Than that, I mean, Grant Delpit, I don't know. John Johnson, I don't know. JOK, I don't know. I mean, it's like, so, but all I do know is that I'm not requesting that our defense be, the Bears from the mid 80s. I just want average. That's it. That's all I want. And right now, I think you're not going to get it done with Joe Woods.
Right. And they expected that this was going to be a top 5 defense that would be leaning on the defense, and it's not working. Look, there comes a time when you've got to invoke Occam's razor. The answer is right in front of you. And as I've said in past podcasts, you have the courage to look at what the truth is. The truth is we have a defensive coordinator who's not up to the job. Okay, this happens all the time in the NFL. You reach a crossroads with your quarterback, with your coordinator, with your scheme, where you either make the adjustments and evolve, or you lose and you go extinct. Now, Kevin Stefanski, if you're listening to this, you are at that crossroads. You are no longer a quarterback coach or an offensive coordinator. In fact, think about what happened in Minnesota when they pulled the quarterback, when they actually fired the guy who was calling the plays. And I believe Stefanski stepped in. And there was an immediate turnaround in how Kirk Cousins was playing. Once they changed, I think even Case Keenum was there, and he was part of the renaissance. The Vikings made the playoffs. They were going around and around in circles, and they changed the play caller because the play caller was wedded to his scheme, irregardless of who his players were or whether they could operate that. And that's what we're seeing here. The answer is simple. We have a defensive coordinator who is not coaching up his players. Their tackling is poor. They look confused. They're always getting suckered. They're always missing big plays. That is a coaching problem. Now, it's one thing if they don't have the speed or the talent or whatever, but these guys clearly, high draft picks, free agent signings, Clowney, Garrett. I mean, Clowney and Garrett were in last week, and they still lost. They still got killed by the Chargers.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah,
It's
you
really
had
bad.
Clowney, you had Garrett, you had Denzel, and you had John Johnson. You had 4 players who were all pros, and they got run over. That's coaching. And you know what, people? Let's not gaslight this. We don't need to talk about how Nick Chubb should have kneeled. Really? Or how Jacoby Brissett threw another interception at the end of the game. No, it's the defense has been a consistent problem starting with opening day. Consistent. Even what's his face? Trubisky looked good in the first half.
They all look good.
They all look good. They're not confused. So Woods has got to go, and the sooner the better, because it can't get any worse than it got yesterday.
Well, especially
Right.
with how the schedule is coming up.
Yeah.
Ravens, Bengals, you got Bills, you got Tom Brady.
Who would replace Woods, Brooke? Who on the defensive side? Where's the Bill Callahan?
Honestly, like I'd find just some guy, one of the older guys on the staff who has some experience working on the defensive side. Or you give it to, I know our defensive line coach is is a young guy. Just be like, I mean, like you say, can't get any worse.
Right. And it sends a message. It sends a message. It's called smart, tough, accountable. Okay?
Yeah.
So talk is cheap. No more players' meetings. No more vowing we have to get better. No more talking about how good that practice was on Wednesday. We are on, quote unquote, to Cincinnati, as Bill Belichick would say. Okay? We either make the change or we quit being surprised at the results that come every Sunday, because it's not going to get any better, because teams have already zeroed in on the confusion. They know how to play the Browns. They've exposed Joe Woods' scheme. So that's what it is. Final thoughts, Brooke?
Well, I never, am a proponent for someone to lose their job, but I mean, and not only have the Browns lost fans because of the signing of Deshaun Watson, but I think they're starting to lose some fans because they're seeing the same garbage week after week. And I'm sure as a NFL owner like Jimmy Haslam, his experience in the past has been to just let go and start over fresh. And I think that if this trend continues where, their final record is 4-12, 3-13, I mean, it's going to get bad. And there is no way that they are starting the fresh new season with their fancy new quarterback with any questions on the coaching.
Well, they've got two things hanging out there. The first is easy. You've got to get rid of Joe Woods. You know, players have no confidence in him. That's obvious from the play on the field. That's number one. Number two is we got to ask seriously about why is Jacoby Brissett better than the guy sitting behind him? I mean, we're talking about a journeyman who looks confused, who's not making his reads. You know, who is our backup, Brooke? I'm embarrassed to say I'm having a senior moment.
Backup quarterback?
Yeah.
Who is it? Josh Dobbs?
Yeah, Dobbs. Dobbs can hand off. Okay. He can hand off the Chubb and Hunt. He can certainly hit the dink and dunks, right? And as an added bonus, he could actually run the ball.
Yeah, but it's the head coach's job to manage the entire team.
Yeah.
And right now, he's not doing that. The offense looks great. Yesterday was their only, I think, really bad game this season.
Yeah, I agree.
So if Stefanski, you know, says, you know what, Joe, I like you, but you got to go. We're gonna promote someone within Bill Callahan, Stump Mitchell, the running back coach. I need you to step it up, be a little more involved. Alex Van in the offense. I got to get my hands all over this defense.
Well, he may not have the ability, but whatever. The fact of the matter is, we've had a consistent problem with the defense. So we'll pick up and talk about this after the next Browns debacle. So anyways, Brooke, thanks for your time. I know you got other things to focus on. Just keep remembering when you say those vows, you know, talk is cheap. You can say the vows, but you got to back them up, right? So we'll end on that note. One of that happy note. Okay, thanks, Brooke.
Right. Yep.
We'll talk later. Okay.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Browns Anonymous podcast with Mike Reilly. We have a lot more content on the way as we get this new podcast started. You can also check out some of our other podcasts like the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast and other new ones that will start soon. On any platform that you find yourself listening to us on, feel free to leave us a like or comment or follow us. It always helps.